posted two assignments, page 57 and page 61. And the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is going to help you with page 61. Obviously, when we went over the amendments last week, hopefully that will help you with page 57. Okay. Those are, optional, guys, but it's an opportunity to get, you got 27, like 53 points, guys, or 43 points. If you do it well, it's a good opportunity for your grade. Because the second test, which is coming up, I don't know if we can get to it Thursday. We don't have school on Friday, but there is a possibility we could take a test Thursday over section 2, which is quite a bit. Okay, so if you've been taking notes, you definitely need to start looking over those. And doing the amendment assignment will help you with the test. There's going to be amendments on the test as well. Those will be basically fill in the blank. So the amendments on the test will look like the blank amendment allowed for the right to bear arms. And you just put in a number, just like matching. There's 27 of them. It's kind of just like matching, right? Just throw a number in there, right? Hopefully it's the right number. Yes? Now, if you had that amendment and you wrote it on the board, you probably remember that one for sure, or those, if you had more than one. Okay, so after we finish the amendments, kind of move on to federalism, okay? So I have a slideshow here. This is from my regular class that I take a couple of weeks with on federalism. I'm going to use this today, but I don't want you to write all this down. Okay, I'll tell you what to write down as we go through it. Okay, and it won't be a ton, but it's the important stuff that'll show up on a test. Okay, I do a whole chapter here for them, but let me go back to this last slide that I had open a second ago. And these are some terms that will help you with page 61. So if you do have your book, maybe go to page 60, I think it is. And then there's some questions on page 61. So this is basically in your book on page 60, right here. This stuff that's up here, it's in your book already, or in your notes. Like this last thing we have in your notes. Full faith and credit clause. We've already talked about this with Article 4 of the Constitution. Okay, Article 4 of the Constitution. The first three, remember, are the three branches. Article 4 is that relationship between states and the national government and between states. Okay, so we talked about driver's license here, right? Full faith and credit. One state must recognize another state's official documents. Okay. All right. So today we're going to talk about these types of powers. All right. And this is what your homework assignment is on page 60. So if you go to on page 61, if you go to page 60, at the very top, there's basically a definition. All right. It says, under federal system of government, powers are divided among national, state, and local governments. That's our basic definition. Powers are shared or divided. This means that in the United States, some powers may belong to the national government, while others may belong only to state and local governments. Likewise, some powers are shared by each of the three, while still others may be denied to either the national, state, or local governments. As you've seen in the arguments of the Founding Fathers, there are many supporters of the idea of a strong national government, but few wanted to see a powerful central government usurp and abuse the powers of state and local governments. So they define some of these. So express powers are ones that are actually written in the Constitution. Okay, so if you look on page 60, we start with the inherent powers. Okay, and these are national powers. Inherent means, as you guys are sitting there right now, you're all breathing. You don't have to think about breathing, but you're breathing. Yes? Same thing. Soon you're going to blink. Okay? It's inherent that your body does this. So inherent powers are things that naturally belong to any government. All right? So what is that? Regulate immigration, acquire territory, grant and receive diplomatic recognition, stop a rebellion. Okay? These are national powers. State and local governments don't necessarily have these inherent powers. Okay? Then you have the express. So if you go to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Congress is empowered to do the following. These are the powers of the national government. They're specifically listed. Okay? Examples of that in your book: printing money, punishing counterfeiting, declaring war, copyright, patent laws, these sorts of things. Okay? They're all written in there. They're expressed. Does that make sense? And then there are those that are implied. Okay, so implied powers here. They're not specifically listed in the Constitution, but they are logical extension of express powers. Well, kind of. So when we go back to the Federalist Papers, guys, okay, remember the Federalist Papers explain the Constitution. The Constitution is very small. This is very detailed. Okay, so the example I used when we read through the Federalist Papers, when you guys read them, Federalist number 78 is the one that gives you judicial review. Because the first Supreme Court under John Jay did not have judicial review, but they used the Federalist Paper to show that there was an implied power that the Supreme Court could rule that president's actions were unconstitutional, and laws of the of the legislative branch, those are unconstitutional. That was an implied power, not specifically listed. This is where you really stretch the authority of the government with these implied powers. Okay, so there's this clause in the Constitution called the necessary and proper clause. Okay, if you see this on number 3 on page 60, necessary and proper, okay, it's the last of the express powers. And it says this: to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into the execution of the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested in this by this Constitution in the government of the United States. That's the national government. Or in any department or officer thereof. This has a nickname. Anybody know what this nickname is of this power? It's called the necessary and proper clause. It's the elastic clause. Yeah. Good. It stretches the authority of the government. Necessary and proper. You guys with me? An implied power. All right. Then you have powers that are denied to the national government. Now, I don't have that up here, but it's on page 60. Okay. So they cannot suspend habeas corpus except in times of national crisis. You seen that? Lincoln did it. FDR did it. Okay, during World War II. Okay. Ex post facto laws. Ever heard of these? Ex post facto. So, you know how they changed the tobacco age, right, from 18 to 21? Okay, so let's say today it's 18, and you buy a pack of cigarettes, and you possess those cigarettes. You have them. You bought them legally. They changed the law tomorrow, okay? And you're like, oh, well, I better throw these cigarettes away. Okay, can they charge you with a crime and you throw them away? Can they charge you for violating the law yesterday when it wasn't the law? That would be an ex post facto law. So that's like creating laws to go back and punish somebody that you didn't like what they were doing. You can't do that. Does that make sense? I think I explained that pretty good. Okay, bills of attainder. This is what declare an individual guilty of a capital offense without a trial. Can't do that. Okay, that's a power denied to the federal government. They cannot tax exports. It's in the Constitution. That's good because if it exists, Congress likes to tax it. They tax almost everything, guys. Okay. Give preference to any state over another state in matters of regulation of commerce or of revenue or tax or of any vessel bound to or from another state. So none of that. You can't tax a truck coming from one state to another. Federal government can't do that. Use money from the Treasury without the passage and approval of appropriations bill. Now, I'm pretty sure presidents have violated this one left and right, but generally does not get challenged, and they cannot grant titles of nobility. Then you have state powers, okay? These could be also construed as reserve powers, okay? They belong to states because the Constitution neither delegates, gives these powers to the national government, nor prohibits them to the state. Does anybody remember which amendment to the Constitution reinforces this idea of reserve powers or state powers? Somebody had it. Number 10. Who had number 10? Good morning. Did you have the 10th Amendment? 15. Okay. This 10th Amendment. It's Reserve Powers, State Powers Amendment, okay? Well, it's right there on page 60, people. Are you following along at the bottom? State powers, where it says 10th Amendment right there. You guys see that? Wake up. All right, reserve powers belong exclusively to the states. Now, the example I've used multiple times in here is education. Okay, nowhere in the Constitution does it grant the power of education anywhere in here. It doesn't even use the word. Okay, so it's not a power given to the national government. It's not denied to the states or local governments. So who's in charge of education? State and local governments are, not the national government. Does that make sense? So you tell me, how in the world do we have a U.S. Department of Education? We didn't have one until 1979, guys. Okay? Current administration, you may like this, you may not, is trying to get rid of it because it's not a power of the national government. Okay? We have $37 trillion in debt. And want to balance the budget. You might want to cut something. Maybe you should cut something that doesn't belong to the national government. I'm just saying. Okay. All right. And then powers denied to the states. Oh, the power to issue license. Top of page 61, guys. I don't know if you know. I turned the page. Top of page 61. The power to issue licenses. It's a state power. The power to regulate intra-state trade within the state. Okay? Power the states have. And then states cannot enter into treaties, alliances, or confederacies with foreign countries. Kansas cannot sign a treaty with Canada. That is power granted to the United States, not Kansas. Kansas cannot declare war on Canada. Kansas cannot print its own money. You see? See? Those are good. Okay. Concurrent powers. Power held by both the national government and state governments at the same time. Law enforcement. We have federal law enforcement, FBI. We have state law enforcement, state troopers. We have local law enforcement, Wichita police officers. Okay. The other example would be courts. You have federal courts, you got state courts, you got local courts. Another one would be taxes. Federal taxes, state taxes, local taxes. Those are three really good examples of concurrent powers. Okay? You name two? Hint? Can you name two concurrent powers? Yeah. Can you name some express powers? Can you name the nickname of implied powers? Okay, test is coming up, people. Okay, so at the bottom of page 61, guys, check that out. I made those due Wednesday night. Okay, so you got 2 days to do the amendments if you didn't do them already on page 57 or 57, 59, excuse me, page 59, and the 15 on page 61. Okay. Good? Okay, I'm going to go back and go through this slideshow a little bit and talk about federalism, okay? So again, I don't want you to write all this down. I will tell you what to write down. And I've got a lot to talk about with this, okay? Like I said, I do a whole chapter in my other class on this. But let's just get started. Okay. Not sure if you have heard of this with the Catholic Church, okay? But there's a nice comparison here, guys, to what federalism looks like, and it's called subsidiarity. Right? You guys heard of this before, subsidiarity? Okay, so like if we have a problem at Bishop Carroll Catholic High School, do we call the Pope? That wouldn't make sense. Okay? If we had a problem at Bishop Carroll High School, would you call the bishop? Not necessarily. Okay? I was gone Thursday and Friday. We had a sophomore retreat, boys retreat the other day. I was hearing some rumors and stuff, like might have been some suspensions or something like that. Huh? Wednesday? Okay. Well, I was gone Thursday, so anybody in our house? Okay. Do you guys hear about that? Yeah. It's bad. Being idiots.
So do you know?
Yeah, I heard somebody got like swiped or something.
Yeah.
Legs. Was there more than that? There was only one suspension.
Well,
That's how rumors are.
There's a couple freshman boys.
Okay. All right. Okay, so yeah, whoever is closest to the problem takes care of the problem. That's one way to think about federalism. Okay, yeah, we do have a strong central government, national government, but you don't want them micromanaging state and local governments. I mean, we don't want that. We don't want the national government breathing down our necks. I mean, this is the whole argument they were having during the Constitutional Convention between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Okay, so when you create a federal system of government, really, guys, you're looking at that sharing or division of power between the three. Okay, so what to write down here? Nothing yet. Okay, so increasing. Federal government has gotten more and more powerful as time goes on. In history class next semester, when we get to the Great Depression, guys, and Franklin Roosevelt, you're going to see a huge expansion of the federal government because we're in a crisis. All right, we're in an economic crisis, and so you're going to see the government grow rapidly and their powers grow rapidly. All right, so during the 20th century. They've increased their influence, all right? Now, I do want you to write this down. In the the 70s and early 80s, they had this thing called revenue share. So write down revenue share. That's on the test. So if you're just doing notes, just do federalism, okay? And underneath it, revenue share. Okay, to define revenue sharing is federal tax dollars that are shared with local and state governments. All right, guys, I'm going to use an interesting analogy here. I apologize ahead of time. So, excuse me. as I talked about a little earlier, right? We have a $37 trillion national debt. Each year that you spend more than you take in, that's called a deficit. And then when you add those accumulated deficits from, 2008, 2009, 2000, that's your national debt. Okay. So if you go back to the 70s, guys, we were running deficits, but nothing like we do today. Okay. So the federal government took in tax dollars, all kinds of different taxes, but federal income tax, corporate income tax, any tariffs, they take in taxes that way as well. So they take in all this money. What they did is they started sharing it with the states and local governments. They said, hey, we've got some extra money. Not really. We've got some extra money, and we're just going to share it. We're going to give it back to you, because where do tax dollars originate? They originate in the states. So Kansans send money to Washington, D.C. Californians send more money to Washington, D.C. because there's a lot more Californians. Yes? Texas, New York. And if they're rich, like there's a lot of rich people in California, they're going to send even more tax dollars. Okay, states like Wyoming contribute very little to the national government revenue. But anyways, they're going to send it back to the states. Now, guys, this is based on population. Okay, so the more people you have, California is going to get more of this revenue sharing than Kansas. But Kansas still gets some too. Everybody with me? Now, do you think states and local governments like it when the national government sends them money? Yeah. Now, a cynic would say this, well, hey, national government, thanks for taking our money and then giving it back to us. Thank you so much for giving our money back, all right, so that we can spend it on things we need to spend it on. That's a cynical take, okay? But anyhow, I'm going to use an analogy here, okay? Everybody knows what crack is. You guys know what crack is? Crack is a drug. It's cocaine, all right? Crack is a drug. Don't do crack, okay? Crack kills, right? Don't do crack. That was a public service announcement from the 1980s. Crack is a drug. Don't do crack. So, but when people first tried crack the first time, and smoke it, smoke crack, okay? Stump. You heard of crack? Yeah, okay. Is it easy? Do people get addicted to it? Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and hand you guys out some free crack. No, I'm not going to charge you anything. It's just free. Here, try this, okay? And you try it, and you're like, man, that gives you kind of a euphoric feeling. It makes you feel really good, all right? So this is what the government does. Sends out some free money, and they're like, hey, thank you. What do you do with this free money? Well, let's say you want to hire some more teachers for your state. Kansas is going to hire 50 new teachers with this revenue sharing. The money originated in Kansas. They give it back to us and say, oh, thank you, government, and we're going to hire 50 new teachers. Okay, great. So we hire 50 new teachers, shrink class sizes in Kansas, and what happens next year? When you got to pay those 50 new teachers that you hired this year with the revenue sharing, what happens next year? How do you pay those teachers? Well, you're going to need more revenue sharing from the government, right? And just like when you tried that crack for the first time, you're like, man, Mr. Eva, that was good. Can I get some more of that? You're like, sure, here's some more crack. Okay, so 2-3 years go by. We get through the 70s into the early 80s, okay? And pretty soon, the states are becoming dependent on this money from the federal government. You guys following me on this? Just like you're becoming dependent on crack. Okay, so now the next thing is, now that I got you hooked on this free money or this free crack, now you really want it and you need it. So you're going to say, Mr. Ebright, can I get some more of that? I'm saying, yes, however, you got to follow my rules to get this money. And this is what the federal government's going to do. We're going to get the states addicted to free money and local governments addicted to free money. And then they're going to tell them, in order to get this money, you got to do these things. Follow me. I'll just give you one quick example. the drinking age. As I told you guys before, the drinking age is not a national law. The national government said to the states, if you want money, revenue for transportation, for roads and bridges and billions of dollars in money for transportation, you have to change your drinking age to 21. Now, is that blackmail? Does that sound like blackmail? Where does the money originate? Oh, it originates in Kansas. We send it there. They send it back with strings attached. They said, if you want this money back, you got to follow our rules. This is how the federal government works. Okay? Right now, President Trump is using this ability right now with immigration. He's saying to sanctuary states and sanctuary cities, if you don't help, you arrest somebody that's in the country illegally, and you don't call immigration customs enforcement, ICE, because you don't think you should, you're not following the law, well, then we're not going to send you money. See how that works? Okay, so you don't have to write this down. But guys, revenue sharing was great because you could spend it on whatever you wanted. You want to hire more cops? You want to hire more teachers? You want to fix your airport? Whatever you want to spend the money on. States love this. Okay, it's like where do we need to put this money? Now, by the time we hit the 80s, guys, we're starting to run bigger deficits. The federal government is spending quite a bit more than it's taking in, creating a bigger national debt. Everybody's following that, right? So there's pressure to cut federal spending. Do they? No, they don't. They just changed the name. Okay? So instead of calling it revenue sharing, they're going to call it something else. They're going to call it grants. Okay? Federal grants. So in the 80s, they changed the name to federal grants. You can write that down. Okay? And I'm going to describe a couple different kinds of grants that the government uses. So in order to get these federal grants, you have to follow federal rules and regulations if you want the money. All right, so just kind of go to this next slide here. Okay, here's a good graph. All right, this is 1960. See that? To 2017. Federal grants to state and local governments. All right, you go back to 1960, they were sending $45.3 billion to the states and local governments. Money that came into the federal government being sent back to the states for what? Capital investment, which would be things like airports, bridges, stuff like that. Payments to individuals, guys, that's welfare. Okay, these are like SNAP, WIC, food stamps, okay, women and infant children, these sorts of things, okay. All right, so you see a big jump here in 2008, 2009. What happened here where you see this go straight up? Huh? It was a piece of legislation passed by Obamacare. Okay, and guys, this is what the government shutdown's over right now. So they said we are going to subsidize, send money to states and local governments or to individuals in the states to help pay for their health care. Okay, and that's what they're arguing about. Those subsidies are expiring at the end of the year, and they've got to draw them back up. Did I talk about this with you guys the other day, how there's 9 million men in this country that have dropped out of the labor force? Most of them in their 20s and 30s. Did I talk about this? Okay, you want to know why the government shutdown's going on right now, right? You're like, what's going on? Okay, so when these Obamacare subsidies end, that that money to go to poor people to get Medicaid, which is health care for the poor, is going to expire. There will be no money for that. And what the Republicans are saying, they're in charge, they control Congress, is that we need some tough love here because we've got a bunch of 20-something-year-old men that are staying in their parents' basement, milking off the federal government, getting free health care in their 20s and 30s when they should be working. They need to get a freaking job. Okay, there's 9 million able-bodied men just dropped out of labor force. Do not let that be you. Please. Because I don't want to have to pay for your health care when you're completely capable of going out and getting a job. Does that make sense? That's what the government is saying. Okay? And some of that money is making its way to people that are in the country illegally as well for health care. And so they're saying, listen, we want to fix this. The Democrats are saying, no, you need to fund it. $1.5 trillion, you need to fund it. And they're like, no, we need to fix it. So that's what the government shutdowns are. With me? And you can fall on either side of that. I mean, it's just kind of how you view it, okay? All right, so, not just Obamacare, okay? You don't need to write that down. Okay. Don't have to write this down, okay? But just let me kind of talk about it. So when we talk about federal grants over the years, so there were before the 70s, we see it before that, okay? So land ordinance of 1785. Okay, set aside land inside the states for public schools. Okay, so the land that Northwest High School sits on was set aside a long time ago. When Kansas became a state, they said, okay, you got to set aside parcels of land for schools. Okay, in 1862, they established state universities with the Morrill Act. These were A&M universities. Okay, so the federal government helped establish these. You guys know what A&M stands for? Agriculture and mechanics. And how would you describe mechanics today? What kind of program is that at K-State, mechanics? Engineering. Yeah, so agriculture and engineering. This is what K-State's known for. They have good engineering programs over there. And they have, obviously, agriculture, okay? So K-State was the first one created through this Morrill Act in 1862, all right? And still around and kicking, okay? Some of you might be going there next year. Anybody guys going there next year, maybe? Maybe, okay. Yeah, Texas A&M, same thing, okay? This is grants from the federal government to the states for certain things. We see this with transportation systems, housing, welfare for the needy, and so forth, okay? All right, write this down. Categorical grant. So we went from revenue sharing to categorical grants and grants and aid. We use these quite a bit today, okay? These categorical grants. Hi, Cindy.
Hey, Charlie. Happy birthday.
Thanks. Okay. You don't have to write all this down, but you might give a couple examples here, okay? But this tends to be very specific grants from the federal government to the states. Categorical, think specific, okay? So if the federal government wants to micromanage the states and tell the states what to do, this is one way to do it, okay? We want you to fix your airports. Now, you guys, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, I think you probably are. Our airport that I flew into last night is called Eisenhower Airport, yes? Remember what it was called before that? Just a few years ago. Called Mid-Continent.
JP Morgan, please come to the main office. JP Morgan, please come to the main office. And back staff prayer will be in the Madonna Chapel in about 3 minutes. Thank you.
So, federal government gives a grant to the state of Kansas to improve the runways at airports, fix their airports. We use this money to buy all of this new signage. We built a new terminal at Wichita Airport, okay, which used to be called Mid-Continent. This could be unemployment compensation, fighting crime. Natural disaster aid is a really good example of this. Okay, if you have a hurricane or a big fire, big earthquake, and they declare it a natural disaster, federal government declares it that, then you're going to get a categorical grant to help you recover from that. So in this way, guys, think about it this way. When there's a big tornado in Kansas, Californians, Wyomings, yes, they all contribute to that because it's coming from the federal government. There's a hurricane in Florida, okay, which it is hurricane season. We haven't seen any big ones yet, or really any big storms in the Gulf, which is good because, you know, causes a lot of damage. But if you have that happen, natural disaster aid, okay? Now, California's going to get more money than Kansas. They have bigger population, okay? Now, here's where they got you. But the crack, okay, typically requires states to contribute their own funds as well. Oh, wait a sec. Okay. Real quick, guys, I know we're running out of time, but let's get this straight. We pay taxes to the federal government. They send it back to us and say, this is where you have to spend it. And then they say, you have to contribute some of your own funds to that. Now, in the state of Kansas, quick question. We pay state income taxes as well, yes? Those go to Topeka. And who in Topeka decides where we spend the revenue from the tax dollars from the Kansas state income tax? Who decides where that money goes? The state legislature and the governor, right? The governor doesn't pass the laws. The state legislature does. The two biggest expenditures for the state of Kansas are education, our public schools, and our roads. Those are the two biggest expenditures. What's the biggest expenditure of the Catholic diocese? What do they spend more money on than anything else, the Catholic diocese? Education by far. It's like 85% for you guys to be here this morning. Okay? So, my point is this. Federal government now is directing the state legislature where they have to send their money. So who's in charge? Apparently the federal government's in charge. Because now they tell the state legislature, if you want this money that originated from your state, if you want it back, you got to contribute, you guys use your tax dollars and add money to that. So really what we've seen, guys, is a big growth of the power of the national government because they got us addicted to free money with revenue sharing. And now they're controlling our own state budgets. And I will expand on that tomorrow, okay, with these notes. Good? All right. I know it's a lot for Monday, but thank you.